How can it be that everybody's so worried about the profits that the oil companies are making? I did some sketches, and the three top oil companies, Esso, BP and Shell, have made over £100 billion this year. If you think about that, you've got to understand what they're doing for that money. They take something which is dangerous to transport, always in a place that you can't get to it easily. I've been out in the North Sea and I've watched what an oil rig does when it's in the middle of a storm, and it's a really serious thing. So the oil comes from the oil rig, eventually it gets to land and then needs to be processed. After it's been processed and refined, it then needs to be delivered to a prime expensive site, as a petrol station, and then it needs 24-hour supervision because it's a hugely dangerous place to be. So what we can be sure is that they have a difficult job to do. They find this oil, which in itself is no fun. They then pump it from the ground or the ocean bed, and eventually it finds its way on the high street where you buy it. And let's just say that you're paying somewhere between £1.50 and £2 depending on the mood. It's still an interesting situation because half of that is tax. So let's just take a number. Let's just say that out of the remaining half, let's say that 20% of it is profit. Now, I'm not going to put this on screen because what will happen is that people won't bother to watch. So what I've done is I've made a PDF of these numbers which show exactly how it works. But here's the situation. Out of the amount of money that's taken from the pump, half goes to the government and half is spent in finding and distributing the fuel. 20% of that, let's say, is profit, which means that for every litre of fuel that gets sold, the government are making 50% of it. So they have a huge control, first of all about the final sale price, but also about how much profit's being made. Now, try and imagine that. Imagine that you weren't talking about fuel. Imagine, and I don't know this is true, but imagine that the oil companies sort of have a little cartel and they work together. Imagine now that you go out to Asda or Morrison's and you say, I'd like my favourite loaf of bread, and they say it's £5.50 for that loaf. Yeah, but it was only £1.45 before. Well, yeah, it's gone up in price, and you'll find that Asda and Lidl and Tesco and Sainsbury's are all the same price. You say, okay, then I'll buy flour. Flour's £10 a bag. But it was only £1.90 before. Now, if we allowed the supermarkets to do what the oil companies have done, it would be devastating. The problem is that there's millions and millions and millions of pounds just going to waste. And my worry is that it doesn't matter how much the oil companies make. So, let's say, for example, that the government were held to account. So at the end of every year it was treated like a business. So we'd have a balance sheet. It would say wars, so many billion, foreign aid, so many billion, the NHS, so many billion. And then we actually get a chance to see where the money goes to. And each MP responsible for each department would have to be able to explain how they managed to spend that money. Everybody would be interested because the numbers would be so big. It just seems frightening that there is no accountability to this. The government have done some very strange things, and I just see that they're gathering billions and billions of pounds and they don't actually say how they spend it. In the UK we don't have a written constitution. What we do have are shreds which come together to form the common law. 1,000 years ago there was the Magna Carta, which really started to condense exactly what the common law was. But ultimately we have a right to know how we're being governed. When we vote and we end up with a political party, and we have a royal family. The king or queen swears an oath to look after the people. Now, I don't see why that shouldn't be taken literally, and that we should actually see why it is that our money gets spent in different ways. Wouldn't it be interesting to see a balance sheet as if it was a business? The American Second Amendment, your right to bear arms, isn't your right to have a gun so that if somebody irritates you, you can shoot them. Of course that does happen. But the real reason is that the Second Amendment says that you have a right to bear arms and form a well-armed militia against the government who are causing tyranny for their people. I never thought I'd say this, but with thousands and thousands of people going on strike in this next week in the UK, it's proving to us that we've reached a tipping point, and it's time for people to get up and be heard. Now, it doesn't matter if you're a doctor or whether you're a nurse or a bus driver or a train driver. The issue is that people are being cut to pieces financially. A little restaurant down the road from us here, their electricity bill was £4,900 per month. It's now gone up to just short of £10,000. And they say that they just can't carry on paying that. Well, just to show you how serious this is, I might have to learn to cook, and that would be a real disaster. I think it's fair to say that we haven't got a political party who actually looks after the people, and that's the next thing that needs to happen. We need to find somebody, whether it's Neil Oliver, Russell Brand, somebody who's liked, somebody who's understood, and can gather a lot of people behind them. In Europe they're having the same problems. In Italy they've got the most right-wing government they've ever had. It's a situation that has come to a head, and something has to give. I almost sound like I'm turning to being a socialist, but I actually believe that it's time that something was said. It's time that the people were made themselves heard and made a difference. Thank you. It's magic that you made it this far. So where do you go now? You meet all our partners at travelcanoe.com/support. There's 1,000 activities, all great fun and all things that you should be doing. What do you do now? Let's cue that spooky music.